The film opens in May 1945, on the last day of the war in Europe. In Austria, Allied soldiers stop a convoy, guns raised, and a large man in a blue suit steps out. One of the American soldiers realizes immediately who's in front of him. Hermann Göring, Hitler's second-in-command. Calm, overweight, and strangely polite, Göring surrenders with his wife and daughter and even asks the Americans to collect his luggage. Cut to Washington, D.C., in the middle of the night. Supreme Court Justice Jackson is woken up by a government agent banging on his door. They inform him Göring has been captured alive in Austria. Jackson asks the agent what is going to happen to him now. For years, people like Churchill wanted top Nazis handled with summary justice. Basically, line them up and shoot them. Jackson is against that. He's a judge, and executing prisoners without trial goes against everything he believes in. Jackson wants to have a trial, but there's a problem. There has never been an international criminal trial like this. One country cannot dictate to the citizens of another how they should behave. There is no precedent. Who exactly do you put on trial? And what do you even charge them with? Jackson doesn't have all the answers yet, but he knows one thing. All the Allies have to participate. The US, Britain, France, and Russia. They would have 4 international judges. A tribunal, because the world needs to see what these men did in a courtroom on the record. Meanwhile, in Luxembourg, we meet Dr. Kelly, an American psychiatrist on a mysterious assignment. He's picked up by Sergeant Howie, a translator, and taken to the Grand Hotel Mondorf, a former luxury hotel turned into a secret U.S. military prison. There, the commandant explains Kelly's mission. The hotel is holding what's left of the Nazi high command, Göring and the others. The Allied powers are debating whether to put them on trial. Kelly's job is to evaluate their mental health, mainly to prevent self-unaliving. Hitler, Goebbels, and Himmler have already taken their own lives using hidden cyanide capsules. The Allies can't afford to lose any more high-profile prisoners before trial. Kelly is shown Göring's possessions from his surrender, a fortune in currency and jewels, and boxes of powerful painkillers. The commandant thinks they are for his heart. Kelly instantly recognizes them as a strong opiate and realizes Göring has a drug problem. Kelly asks about the whereabouts of Göring's family, but the commandant tells him to mind his own business, which is the Nazis' mental health, and sends him on his way. Kelly is a bit nervous about the magnitude of his mission, but wants to meet Göring immediately. Howie runs through Göring's insane list of titles: Reichsmarschall, head of the Luftwaffe, president of the Reichstag, and Hitler's designated successor. Kelly jokes that now he's intimidated. In his first examination, Kelly finds Göring sitting calmly in his room, acting like royalty in captivity. Howie is there to translate. Göring wants his pills and tells Kelly he has had minor heart attacks, and the pills help with his heart. They also help with the pain because he was shot multiple times in 2 different wars. Kelly checks his heart and breathing and casually calls him overweight. Göring's pride flares up, but Kelly flatters him, turning the insult into a challenge about discipline and self-control. Göring responds well and even calls Kelly different, hinting that they'll be good friends. As they leave, Kelly reveals something important. Göring understood English all along. He's been pretending not to for months, forcing everything to go through a translator, buying time to shape his answers. Kelly decides not to confront him yet. He wants Göring to reveal it when he feels safe. Kelly is then introduced to other key prisoners. Dr. Robert Ley, head of the Nazi Labor Front and architect of slave labor, now drunk, unstable, and rambling. Karl Donitz, commander of the German Navy, who complains no one has even formally charged him and demands to be either indicted or released. Julius Streicher, the fanatical anti-Semitic propagandist, who immediately wants to know if Kelly is Jewish. Kelly quickly figures that Göring is the key figure among them. He unifies the others, carries himself like a leader in exile, and has abruptly imposed a strict diet and exercise routine while cutting himself off from opiates, as if preparing for something. And Kelly must find out what for exactly. One night, Kelly drags Howie to a local library, convinced that Nazis are such narcissists that half of them have books written by or about themselves. His plan is to dissect evil, study these men, test them, and maybe figure out what made them capable of such crimes. He admits there's a selfish motive too, A book about the psychology of Nazi leaders could make him famous. But he also believes they might discover something that helps prevent another regime like this from rising again. Returning from the library, they find Göring has collapsed with severe chest pain. Kelly rushes in and realizes he is having a heart attack. Kelly does whatever he can to calm him down. Eventually, Göring stabilizes and thanks him in English. Kelly has made progress. From that moment on, Göring and Kelly develop a dangerous bond. Back in the political world, Jackson is fighting a different battle. President Truman and Congress are under pressure to avoid a long, messy trial that could turn Nazis into martyrs or give them a platform for their propaganda. Some officials openly say they're perfectly fine with executing Nazi leaders without trial. Jackson argues the opposite. If the Allies just shoot them, history might twist it into victor's justice or even martyrdom. Instead, he wants to prove their crimes in a public court. He pushes for an international tribunal with judges and prosecutors from the Allied forces. The big question is whether the Russians will agree. Surprisingly, Truman calls Stalin directly. The Soviets agree to join and nominate a judge. The trial idea has momentum, but it's still politically fragile. Jackson's struggle continues on a different front. Congress doesn't want to sign off on a big international trial. Truman doesn't want to stand alone politically. And Jackson is running out of options. So he goes all the way to the Vatican to meet Pope Pius XII. He asks for the church's public support for the trials. The Pope refuses, arguing that an eye for an eye isn't the answer and that they shouldn't endorse executions. Jackson pushes back, reminding him that the church signed a concordat with Hitler in 1933, effectively legitimizing the Nazi state. If the Pope won't support justice now, history will remember which side he stood on. The Pope is shaken but still refuses official support. Jackson leaves, but the pressure works in other ways. Eventually, despite resistance, the powers agree. There will be a trial in Nuremberg. Kelly delivers the news to Göring, who is delighted. He wants a trial. He wants a stage. The prisoners are moved to Nuremberg, into a fortress-like stone prison attached to the bombed-out Palace of Justice. The guards strip their cells of anything that could be used for self-unaliving. Kelly continues his psychological tests, including ink blot cards. Göring scores high on intelligence and comes across as a classic narcissist. Grandiose, manipulative, confident, obsessed with power and legacy, less personally concerned with Jews than with German glory and his own status. Göring insists his imprisonment is not a defeat, but the outcome he chose when he surrendered. Kelly still cannot fully understand him. The closer he comes to the trial, the more confident he becomes. He needs to find a way to get closer to him. He tells Howie they need Göring to feel needed. Soon, an opportunity arises. Rudolf Hess, Hitler's former deputy, arrives claiming total memory loss. Kelly believes Göring can expose this lie. Göring agrees to help if Kelly finds his wife and daughter and delivers letters for them. Kelly accepts the deal. During the interview with Hess, Göring quickly identifies contradictions and confirms the amnesia is fake. Kelly keeps his promise and locates Göring's wife and daughter, delivering letters and receiving their replies. Göring is deeply appreciative. As the indictments are finalized, each Nazi is formally charged with crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Stryker asks for a Jewish lawyer just to be provocative. Göring listens calmly, accepting his indictment with cold pride. Robert Ley is hysterical, refusing to go to trial, even punches Kelly. Meanwhile, Jackson is working on his strategy for the trial, but he needs information only someone very close to Göring will know. So Jackson meets Kelly at the ruins of a massive Nazi rally ground. This is where Hitler announced the Nuremberg laws, which stripped German Jews of their citizenship and rights. He asks Kelly to start gathering information not just as a doctor, but as a source. What are the defendants telling their lawyers? What strategies are they planning? Kelly initially refuses, saying it violates doctor-patient confidentiality. Jackson counters, if they don't do this, if they don't win this trial cleanly, the Nazis could come back in another generation. Reluctantly, Kelly agrees to help. He questions Göring about Hitler's early influence. Göring describes how Hitler restored national pride and denies knowledge of atrocities in the camps. Kelly reports to Jackson that Göring can appear sympathetic and might sway the courtroom, but Jackson's team doubts this. Kelly warns them that Göring's skill and confidence could overwhelm the prosecution if underestimated. The next morning, Robert Ley appears calmer and apologetic. Kelly sees signs of progress, but that night, Ley takes his own life. The prison commandant is furious and blames Kelly for not seeing it coming. They bring in a second psychiatrist to double-check Kelly's findings and split authority. He is more openly ambitious and less conflicted about manipulating the prisoners. A rivalry begins. Kelly continues spending time with Göring and his family. He teaches Göring a magic trick, and Howie later notes that Kelly no longer needs a translator and spends more time alone with Göring than as a doctor should. Kelly visits Göring again in his cell and asks him directly how he plans to defend himself at trial. Göring explains that he intends to read a prepared statement, one where he accepts full responsibility for his actions, but refuses to answer for anything done by others without his knowledge. He insists everything he did was for Germany, nothing more. After their conversation, Kelly brings Göring's plan statement to Jackson, slipping him a note outlining exactly what Göring intends to say. Soon after, the trial officially begins. The remaining Nazi leadership sits together in the dock as the world watches. Jackson opens with a powerful address, reminding the court that for the first time in history, national leaders are being held personally accountable for waging aggressive war and committing crimes against humanity. If the world ignores what happened, he warns it will happen again. When Göring is called to the stand, he attempts to launch into his prepared speech, but the judges immediately shut him down. The tribunal has already ruled that the defendants are not allowed to make personal statements at this stage. They will have a chance to speak only before sentencing. The judge reminds him firmly that here, he is not Reichsmarshal. He is simply Hermann Göring, the prisoner. Then he asks for his plea. Göring responds in German, not guilty. Later, Kelly heads out to visit Göring's wife and daughter, but when he reaches the house where they were staying, he finds it ransacked. Outside, a man sitting among the wreckage tells him the Americans took them away. Kelly searches the holding areas where families of Nazi officials are sometimes kept, but there's no trace of them. Desperate for answers, he goes to the one person who would know, the commandant in charge of the Nuremberg prison. He makes a call, then delivers the news bluntly. Emmy Göring has been arrested on suspicion of helping her husband steal and hide art during the war. Their daughter was sent to live with nuns under a strict no-contact order. Kelly is stunned. Göring's family has simply vanished into the system, and there is nothing he can do about it. Back at the prison, Kelly goes to check on Göring. As soon as he steps into the cell, Göring asks whether he's spoken to his daughter and if there are any new letters from his family. Kelly hesitates, then lies, saying there's nothing this time, no new messages. Before he can leave, the new psychiatrist walks in. Completely unaware of the delicate balance Kelly has been trying to maintain, he casually offers Göring his condolences. He tells him that his wife and daughter were arrested 5 days ago. The news hits Göring like a blow. Then the trial presses on, and the prosecution presents its most devastating evidence. Actual film footage from the liberated concentration camps. The camera shows emaciated corpses stacked like firewood, survivors barely alive, gas chambers disguised as shower rooms, crematorium ovens built for mass disposal of bodies. Kelly watches, horrified. Whatever illusions he had about just work camps are shattered. He confronts Göring afterward. Göring tries weak excuses, suggesting the footage could be faked, shifting blame onto Himmler and the SS, and insisting he only approved work camps, never mass murder. Kelly doesn't buy it. The scale is too vast, and the evidence too overwhelming. Their argument erupts. Göring accuses the Americans of hypocrisy, pointing to the atomic destruction of Japan and claiming the Allies killed civilians too. Kelly fires back, telling him the difference is obvious. The Allies bombed war factories, and civilians died as collateral damage. But the Germans built more than 1,000 human slaughterhouses designed specifically to exterminate an entire race. He adds that the U.S. had every right to defend itself. Göring refuses to accept the distinction, insisting the only real difference is that the Allies won. For the first time, Kelly sees the full depth of Göring's denial and self-justification. Göring mocks him, saying he'll never escape being defined by this moment, that Kelly will spend his life trying to relive his brief encounter with greatness. After the confrontation with Göring, Kelly ends up at a bar, where he runs into an attractive reporter he met earlier. Kelly is slightly drunk and worn down, and when she asks how the trial is really going, he vents more than he should. The next morning, Kelly discovers the consequences. His private conversations with Göring, the ones that were never meant to leave the prison, have been leaked to the press. His words are splashed across the front page of a major newspaper, twisted into sensational headlines. The commandant reads the paper and is furious. When Kelly walks into his office, he doesn't hold back. He tells Kelly he's finished. He's being dismissed from duty and sent back to the United States immediately. Kelly leaves the office and heads toward the train station, convinced that everything he's worked for at Nuremberg has just collapsed. At the train station, Kelly is met by Howie. Still defeated, he tells him the whole trial is just a show for the cameras and that none of it really matters. Kelly then hears a completely different perspective from Howie. He reveals he's not just some random American with good German. He was born in Germany, grew up in Munich, and is Jewish. His family tried to emigrate, but there was only money for one ticket, so they sent him alone. He ended up in the U.S., got drafted, and came back with the American Army. His parents never made it out. Records show they arrived at Auschwitz and never came back. Only his younger sister survived, now living safely in Switzerland. To Howie, this trial isn't abstract legal theory. It's personal. He wants Göring and Stryker and the others to fall, and he wants them to know they were outsmarted by people they tried to destroy. He begs Kelly to help Jackson, saying that what happens tomorrow at the trial matters. If people like Kelly don't stand up now, that's how regimes like this win in the first place. At the same time, Jackson gets another blow at home. President Truman appoints someone else as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Jackson's political career is basically capped. He staked his reputation on this trial, and now he has nothing to lose. Kelly shows up just before Jackson questions Göring on the stand. He admits he's been planning to write a book about the Nazis, using his private sessions as material. But instead of hoarding it, he hands over everything: personal notes, off-the-record conversations, psychological insights. If Jackson wants any chance against Göring, this is how. Kelly explains the key: Göring's ego. Göring can't admit he was wrong about anything. Every decision he made has to be justified as necessary, logical, and correct. If Jackson can trap him into owning the system that enabled the Holocaust, then Göring will condemn himself with his own pride. The next day, Kelly returns to the Palace of Justice, slipping into the crowded hall despite having been dismissed. The courtroom settles. Jackson steps forward and calls Göring to the stand. At first, Göring is confident and even a little smug. He openly admits the Nazis came to power determined to destroy parliamentary democracy. He admits they suppressed other parties and created concentration camps, initially claiming they were just for communists and political enemies. Göring paints it all as necessary. Germany was weak, the old system had failed. He dodges responsibility for the worst atrocities, pushing those on Himmler and the SS. Jackson struggles to pin him down. Göring tries to explain everything at length and plays to the court. But then Jackson begins to use Kelly's insights. He walks Göring through a paper trail of decrees that systematically stripped Jews of rights, property, and citizenship. The Nuremberg laws, the fines after Kristallnacht, the seizure of Jewish property, and finally the infamous letter authorizing a complete solution to the Jewish question sent to Himmler and Heydrich. Jackson presents the letter signed by Göring in 1941 and reads it aloud to the court. He confirms with Göring that the signature is his and that the orders came from his office. As Jackson reads through the text, he asks Göring whether he has summarized it correctly. Göring claims Jackson's translation is wrong. He points to the very first line, emphasizing that it refers to emigration, not extermination. Göring insists the letter was simply about relocating Jews out of Germany, nothing more. He also seizes on another detail. The German text uses the phrase complete or total solution, not final solution. He argues that Jackson is twisting the language into something it was never meant to be. For a moment, Jackson is thrown off. The courtroom sees the first line exactly as Göring described, and that small distinction gives him a temporary advantage. Jackson has no further questions. But before Göring can walk away with that technical victory, the British prosecutor steps in and finishes the job. He keeps it brutally simple, year after year. While Göring was still Reichsmarshal and Hitler's chosen successor, Millions of Jews were being murdered in camps. Under his questioning, Göring can no longer hide behind wording or translation. Piece by piece, it becomes undeniable. Göring empowered Himmler and the SS. The camps expanded under his authority, and the total solution he insisted was about immigration became the machinery that murdered millions. Göring dodges and claims ignorance, but the British prosecutor pushes him into a corner and asks the defining question. Knowing what we know now, would you still follow Hitler? Göring answers yes, and he even punctuates it with a defiant Heil Hitler. The mask is gone. In that one answer, Göring destroys any illusion of being a rational statesman or a tragic figure. He exposes himself as exactly what he still is, loyal to Hitler, unapologetic and proud. The courtroom erupts. The judges adjourn. And later, Jackson admits the truth. He could never have beaten Göring on his own. He needed Kelly's insight to turn Göring's arrogance into his downfall. Before leaving Nuremberg, Kelly visits Göring in his cell one final time. The mood is subdued, marking the end of months of psychological exchanges. Kelly makes it known that he has helped the prosecution and that their work together is finished. Göring accepts this, noting he had viewed Kelly as a friend for a time, and expresses a final concern about how Kelly will portray him and the others in the future. With that, Kelly ends the visit and walks away. Eventually, the tribunal delivers its verdicts. When they reach Hermann Göring, they call his guilt unique in its enormity. He is sentenced to death by hanging. The executions are scheduled for midnight. The prisoners won't be told until just before. The prison staff prepares the gallows. 8 journalists from the 4 Allied powers are invited to witness the hangings. The doctor prepares to give placebo sleep medication with baking soda to any prisoner who asks. Just before it's all set to happen, a guard bangs on the commandant's door. Göring is lying dead in his cell. He's taken his own life with a hidden cyanide capsule. The commandant is furious. Göring has beaten them one last time. No public hanging, no final humiliation, no photo of him on the gallows. The man who once wanted the whole world to watch him on trial now chooses to make his own private finale. The executions go ahead for the others. Julius Streicher has to be physically forced to cooperate, screaming and fighting until he's shoved onto the gallows. One by one, the condemned Nazis are hanged. Back in America, after the executions, Kelly reads the headlines announcing Göring's self-unaliving, the final escape that denied the Allies their planned public reckoning. Then the film jumps forward and he appears in a television studio, promoting his book on the psychology of the Nazi leadership. The host seems skeptical. Kelly argues that the Nazi leaders were not supernatural monsters. Their personalities, narcissistic, power-hungry, willing to climb over bodies to get control, are not unique to Germany. He says people like that exist in every country, even America. He warns that if we think we'll recognize the next time just because they don't wear swastikas in uniforms, we're fooling ourselves. The pattern is the same. Leaders who stoke hatred, glorify violence, and use laws to dehumanize entire groups. The host looks uncomfortable and cuts to commercial. Kelly walks off set, frustrated, but the film leaves us with his central message. Nuremberg wasn't just about punishing the past. It was supposed to be a warning for the future. Kelly died in 1958 after ingesting a cyanide capsule, mirroring Göring's final act. His family believes he struggled deeply with the weight of his experiences. The end. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time.